except the lack or the minimal usage of aql. That is aql that differentiates iman and kufr. Right? And then I ended last night by asking a question which I had asked you to ponder over before we begin tonight, which is, if aql is what differentiates iman and kufr, then we have to ask a question: how much of the things that we do in our life, our rituals, our marriage rituals, the tarbiyat of our children, the way we raise them, the way we teach them, our marital life, our home life, the way we interact with other people, the priorities that we have in our life, how much of this is based on aql? If aql in Islam is given such a high rank, such a incredible status, that it's what differentiates iman and kufr. But aql requires, of course, the use or operation of aql when it goes from a noun to a verb, right? Be something that we use, requires knowledge. And when our life has knowledge, then we understand what we're doing. We have an idea of, we can control our emotions better as well, because our emotions are based upon knowledge. The way we react to our brother or our sister or our wife or our husband is based on knowledge. It's based on aql. Right? And one of the attributes of anger, one of the synonyms of anger is jahl. That anger itself is a sign of jahl. If Satan is the chief of the army of jahl, right? There's junud al-aql and junud al-jahl, as the hadith tells us. And we would say the Quran also gives ishara to this. That there's armies of ignorance and armies of intellect, aql. And al-ghadab in the shaitan, as all the riwayat say, that anger is from Satan. So even when we're angry, we have to ask ourselves, is this anger based on aql or jahl? And if the anger is based on aql, then I'm with iman. But if my anger is based on jahl, then I'm with kufr. The army of, see, there are two armies, right? There are two armies in Islam, the way it's described. There's two junud. There's the army of aql. That's connected to iman. One. Then there's army, or we could say the forces. Then there's the forces of jahl. And that's connected to kufr. To kufr. So here we have the imam of the time. And here we have shaitan. And each of these have their attributes. Right? So over here, anger is one of them. Right? And then over here, for example, is humility, silence, knowledge, etc. Do you see how I'm breaking it down? So either we are in the camp of aql and iman, or we are in the camp of kufr and jahl. This is how Islam divides the world, how the Quran divides the world. So either our words and our thoughts and our ideas and our feelings and our emotions are in this camp or in the second camp. And that will entirely then determine our spiritual progress. That will then entirely determine whether we are on the path of the Imam or the path of Shaitan. That is how it works. Now, we can have a mixture of both, as I said. It's possible as well. I don't think anyone is entirely in one camp or the other unless you are completely, you know, mashallah. There are the Salihin and the Awliya who only belong to group one. But the problem is when we're all mixed up, and we've got more problems. So, for example, let me give an example here. We are so concerned with our children's education, right? We want to give them, as I said yesterday. Because children are the most important thing in our lives. That's why I speak about it very often, because they are our future. We probably don't love anything as much as we love our own children. They are flesh and blood. That, of course, is a problem as well in itself. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, how dare you love anything other than Allah, more than Allah? Ashaddu hubban min Allah, right? And Allah says, because of that, we come into kufr. You see where I'm going? It's because we love things for the wrong people and things for the wrong reasons. So let me just give you a practical example here. Children, we're told in the ahadith, do not need to begin any formal education until the age of 4. For boys, it's even can be a little bit later, delayed up to 7 even. But by the age of 7, all children should know the different parts of the salah. For boys, the girls by the age of 7 and boys by the age of 9, the salah should be complete by the age of 9. And did you know the Prophet has given us a very step-by-step process as to how to teach our children salah? At what age to teach them Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, what age to teach them Allahu Akbar, at what age to teach them tashahhud, at what age to teach them adhan, at what age to do this, at what age to do this, at what point, at what point, at what point. That is what we call the Islamic tarbiyah, based on aql. But if we do things perhaps based on our back home-ian way of doing things, and that could be based on aql or it could be based on jahal, we're not sure. We're essentially walking blind in the dark. That is what we're doing. Right? My whole point here is that as a community, going forward, the things we do have to be based on aql and knowledge. And in the case of Sayyidah Khadija, that is exactly what we see. Why was she attracted to the Prophet? Because he smelled nice and he looked beautiful? No. It had nothing to do with that. The Prophet, of course, was always the most beautiful and handsome. That's no doubt. There's no doubt about that. She was attracted to his aql. That's what she was attracted to. And that aql is manifested through what? Through his humanity, his caring for others, his empathy, through his belief in God, through his akhlaq. That's how his aql is manifested. That someone could pray night and day. We can pray night and day, but we could still be jahil. We could still be jahil. And this is what Sayyidah Khadija saw in the Prophet, which was unique among every single person in Arabia. Nobody had these attributes. Not in this way. And that's what she fell in love with. And that's why she gave her life for Islam. Not the physical life, but she gave everything that she had. So she gave her life for Islam. She gave her wealth. She gave up her name. She gave up her family. She gave up everything. She became a complete and utter social pariah. There was nothing left for her. Do you know that, brothers? Such that the Prophet was worried about her. Her friends, her family, they would come to her and say, you have married this orphan of Abu Talib, this faqir, young man by the name of Muhammad, you have married him without asking us? Look, just think about it. We have to take lessons from this. What was she looking for? And what are we looking for? She got hell for what she did. I mean, to such an extent, the seerah tells us that she suffered immensely because of the decision that she made. Immensely. She was outcasted, she was criticized, she was boycotted, the women of Quraysh would not visit her any longer. But there was one silver lining to all of this. You know what it was, the silver lining? It was a child that was in her womb by the name of Fatima Zahra. And the riwayat, the ahadith tell us that it was this child that used to speak to her and give her comfort and solace. And one day the Prophet walked in and he saw her speaking. And he asked her, Ya Khadija, what are you? It looks like you're speaking to thin air. She didn't say anything. And then later on he said that, you will have a daughter. And of course he knew what she was speaking to and what she was going through. She gave up all of this for Islam, my dear brothers and sisters. She gave up her wealth, she gave up her prestige, she gave up her social status, she gave up everything for the message of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, so that this could spread to the world. For the cause of da'wah and tabligh, to invite others to this message of Islam. And she realized that the priorities and decisions that we make must emanate from God and return to God. What do I mean? That our priorities, the way we interact, the way we choose to behave, the way we choose to be in this world, comes from God, and then our decisions return to Him for judgment. That our free will comes from God, and the ultimate judgment of our decisions returns to that same God. She understood that a life that is not lived according to the moral paradigm, the moral and ethical structure of a divinely revealed religion, is not a life to live at all. She understood this. And because she understood this, she took a different path in comparison to the peers of her age, of her time. She was profoundly countercultural. Profoundly countercultural. And today we feel countercultural. We feel like we're going against the tide of the dominant culture, don't we? When we go out there, when we see what other people are doing, or even what other people in our community are doing, which is khilaf and in opposition to the message of the Prophet and the A'immah. So we may even feel alienated within our own community sometimes. Sometimes even alienated within our own families. The other day a child came to me. And said to me, so we were talking about why dancing, going to places where there's dancing and stuff is, it's not, it's looked down upon in Islam. And there's reasons for that, because it's inappropriate mixing. Islam encourages modesty. Islam encourages our mind to be in our full control. And of course, the ahadith tell us that these acts are associated with shaitan. Clear. Kid puts up the hand and says, but mom took me to another Shia's wedding where they were doing that. So you have two problems here. You have another Shia, so-called Shia, who's doing this, and the person's mother is taking the child there. Because that's the culture. We're told, well, how will I answer Babi? Right? How will I answer mother? How will I answer father? Baba, how will you answer Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Forget about everybody. Everybody. You know Imam Bakr salamullahi alayhi, he says, he says something so beautiful, brothers. It is so powerful. I'll end with this and then we can go to Q&A. He says, listen to this hadith, Allahu Akbar. The Imam says that the greatest musibat is what? The greatest musibat. He says that if a'dham al-musiba, if somebody accuses you of something, says you've done X, Y, and Z, you're a bad guy, bad woman, it's fine. He says, فكر في نفسك فكر ما قيل فيك. Think about what is said about you. If it is true, then he says, أعظم المصيبة, the greatest musibat and tragedy of your life is if at that moment you fear more, your khawf is more, is the falling of your standing in the eyes of the people instead of sukut, min ayn Allah, your fall from the eyes of God. If at that moment of your life you are worried more about what the people will think and about your status and your position, more so than how you or I have disappointed God, have disobeyed God, have broken our oath and our pledge with Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman, we have violated it, that oath, then we shall know that this is the greatest musibah and tragedy of our life. Then crying for Imam al-Hussein is for what then? Nothing but a show. It's all it is then. If we have broken the oath of allegiance with Allah and with the Imam of our time who is appointed by Allah, then what does it matter if Fulan ibn Fulan Bhai or Ben are going to ask us to answer to them? How many times, I cannot count how many times I've heard, well, how will we answer Fulan ibn Fulan if we don't go? Maulana, how? What will I tell them? I mean, if I could have this is a broken record, this story, right? And the Imams come back to it again and again and again in their ahadith and their riwayat, and the Quran comes back to it. That for the mu'mineen and the mu'minat, the believing men and the believing women, the people of aql, not the people of kufr and jahal, when they are faced with these kinds of choices, their iman increases. Zadu iman wa yaqeen. That their iman only gets more and their yaqeen only increases in the situations in which they have to make these great choices. Between Allah and the Hujjah and what, God forbid, a disgruntled family member may feel or community member may feel when the lines of halal and haram are made clear. Halal and haram at least, not even makruh, leave that aside. Halal and haram. And Sayyidah Khadija taught us that lesson. That's the greatest lesson that she taught us. my dear youth, my dear brothers and sisters, that's what she taught us. She made a choice. She made a choice that was profoundly unpopular in her age, in her time, of which she would starve for this. She would go bankrupt for this. She would become lonely because of this. But today, who remembers those mushrikeen of Quraysh and who remembers Sayyidah Khadija? That all those people, those naysayers, who remembers them? Nobody. But today we're here and we remember Sayyidah Khadija salamullahi alayha. That's how Allah's plan is executed. Remember I said yesterday that Allah always has a plan? That's how Allah's plan is executed. That's how it unfolds. And that is the determination and the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now we'll go to questions. We have about 25 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 17, 20 minutes. Are there any questions? I'm just laying things out in a more general sense as we go on and we go forward, inshallah, into other occasions. We'll get into specifics, but what I wanted to do is kind of lay out the general framework here, right, of the two camps, right? And of course there are many practical ways that we can develop aql, right? And that's through, I'll give you the 5 pieces of advice of Ayatollah Wahid al-Khurasani, which he has given to his students and to us, which is 1, recite Quran every day. Quran every day. 50 ayat if you can. I'll admit, I don't always get to 50 ayat, but I try to read some Quran every single day. Maintaining hijab at all times. Salah. Doing tawassul to the Ahlul Bayt every day, especially to the Imam of the time, remembering him and sending salams to him every single day. And number 5, the Asadari of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. To remember his tragedy, to remember his qatl, to remember his shed blood, and the madhlumiyat of his women and his children every day. You know, my teachers tell us, actually all of my teachers shared one attribute that I saw, aside from having all of these other attributes, is each and every one of my teachers, whether they be in Qom or Najaf or Syria or even here in Toronto, each and every one always remembered the maqtal and the musibat of Imam al-Hussein every single day. Every day. There's a deep ma'rifat in this, basirat. That every day to recall the shahadat of Abu Abdullah. So those 5 things, salah, Quran with some understanding, hijab for both men and women, tawassul, turning to the Imam of our time, doing tawassul every day, sending salams to our Imam, and the Asadari of Imam Hussein. But it has to be done with knowledge. We have to know what we're doing, not do it like parents, like just doing it. So, are there any questions? I'm sure there are questions about some of the things that I've mentioned. Yes, brother.
Before we start,
yes.
Could you repeat the question so it's benefit from the ladies?
Yes. Yeah, I'll repeat the question. Sure, yes. Go ahead.
On the basis of that army of Qatl and forces of Kufr, right? Now how could we implement this in children of age between 7 to onwards?
Between 7 and onwards? Exactly as Imam Sadiq, yeah. Yeah. So they cannot understand it, it is too abstract for a child to understand this concept. what we can do with children from the age of 7 onwards, even earlier of course, but 7 is when the formal education begins. The formal kind of classroom education begins at the age of 7 according to Islam. Is we expose our children to the best of our ability to an Islamic culture, Ahlul Bayt culture, azadari, du'as, majalis, meeting shuyukh and ulama. In the case of the ladies, meeting shaykhas, meeting female scholars as well, introducing that to them, having them come to our home, not being scared of them like the boogeyman. This is very important because it develops a culture of love of deen. That developing the culture of the love of the deen of Islam is extremely important. And the examples and parables that we give our children should be the parables and examples of the lives of the prophets of Allah. When they're at an age to understand, of course. I'm not saying to begin at age 1 necessarily. But as soon as they begin to develop some comprehension faculties, or faculties of comprehension, we have to take advantage. We have to seize those moments. So you tell them creative stories about Noah's Ark and Nabi Nuh and how we got on the Ark with the animals and how Ahlul Bayt are like the Ark, and we can do an arts and crafts activity at home, you know, with mom and dad, and you know, and put the Ark together with paper. That's how children develop an Islamic culture in their home. If that's done on a consistent basis at home, then that love of deen, that love of religion, that love of the Messenger of Allah is almost seamlessly transferred into the children. If the father is always, you know, when he hears the words of Imam al-Hussein, the Noah of Imam al-Hussein, he is weeping. And the child sees the mother or the father weeping when they hear about the arm being lost, and they listen to the kalam, the azadari and the ma'tam of Ahlul Bayt, salamullahi alayhim, the child will no doubt be affected by this. No doubt. There's a reason why, for example, Abdullah al-Mamaqani in Mir'atul Rashad, one of the most important books on raising children, it was a wasiyat to his son, which is a 120-page wasiyat. He says in here that, Ya bunayya, I command you and order you that every day you read the Maqtal of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, even if there is no majlis set up for you. Gather your family and relate to them the Maqtal of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Even one portion of the Aza of Imam al-Hussein, one portion of the story of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. This is a culture. The culture of loving the Ahlul Bayt, the culture of Salah, the culture which is religious centric. But again, if we don't know our basic aqa'id, our basic deen, right? The question is, how do we practically implement this? We have to begin with knowing our deen. And I promise you, if you know your deen, this all becomes easier. It becomes exponentially easier. If you have a basic grasp of Tawheed, of Imama, of Qiyamah, so on and so forth, of Nabuwa, of Adala, and of the basic ahkam and fiqh of Islam. So the traditions tell us two things. The moment we begin to teach our children to read, we have to teach them fiqh. That the fiqh of Islam, the basic ahkam of Islam, taharat, najasat, salat, saum, so on and so forth, have to be taught. And the onus is on whom? Is it on the madrasa? No. Is it on the pulpit, the Maulana with the amama? No. It's on mom and dad. Then if they choose to bring in a teacher, great, that's good. But the ultimate responsibility lies with mom and dad. That if mom and dad don't know the basics, then they're setting up their children to fail. If they cannot answer simple doubts about the existence of Allah, then they're setting up their children to fail. And that's why in Chicago, Maulana Faizi in Chicago, may Allah hafidhullah, may Allah protect him, Sheikh Mukhtar Faizi, at Baitul Ilm in Chicago, one of the very beautiful centers in the Midwest, beautiful center. They have a Saturday school, Saturday or Sunday school. And they made a requirement that any parent who wishes to send their child to the school must attend a class themselves. Otherwise, you cannot send a child to the school. One parent must attend a class, I believe with Sayyid Sulaiman. We think we know it all. Sometimes we're the problem. Why don't we attend classes? And it's and unless we did already, mashallah, then may Allah give you more knowledge. Then there's something else to learn. Are we 100% sure that what we learned in our home countries is based on the Risala of Sayyid Sistani? Because believe me, I was with some people the other day, so, oh, shrimp is makruh, Maulana. How can we eat shrimp? I said, who said shrimp is makruh? Where in the Risala of Sayyid Sistani does it say that shrimp is makruh? Nowhere. No, that's how we were taught in country so and so. My madrasa taught me that shrimp is makruh. So you're creating makruhat? Not according to Sayyid, are you muqallid Sayyid Sistani? Yes. So not learning based on some handbook, but the Risala of Sayyid Sistani, or whichever marja you follow. These handbooks become problems, huh? Big problems. Who knows who translated what and when it was written? It's this dusty old book sitting in the mosque. I don't know what the sources are for it. Get the Risala of your marja and follow that. That is the only way we know whether we are on haqq or whether we are on batil. But then again, I would ask another question. If our kids come and ask us, why do we do taqleed? Can we answer the question? I'm not going to answer it now. We'll have to have a very different session for that. Why do we do taqleed to begin with? What is the wisdom in taqleed? Why can't I follow the fatwa of Sayyid al-Khoi? How many of us, be honest to yourself, how many of us will be able to answer our children? So then do we think they're going to really come to us again to ask us questions? And these are basic issues of deen. I mean, these are not issues that, these are the issues that we should know, like the basic things that are all available in English, all available in books and lectures. There are too much knowledge out there now. I mean, just go to alislam.org, you'll get everything you want to know. In English, mashallah. In English. So those are practical things. Any other questions? We still have about, 10 minutes. Any other questions? From the ladies, questions? I'm sure something I've said is thought-provoking, I hope. Or is it just all boring?
You just said that
Gee.
all the women, they should wear scarf all the time. Yes?
No, this is what our deen tells us, yes.
Yes.
That hijab is a mandatory aspect of
Any
Islam.
celebration in the mosque, suppose, and there's a partition for the men and the women. Are they allowed to remove their scarf on the women's side?
So the question is that if there is a partition, are the sisters allowed to remove their hijab? If there's a partition, of course. If there is no men looking, and men cannot see the ladies, and they're in an enclosed space, then they do not have to, it is their choice whether they wish to keep the hijab, or, well, the headscarf, or to remove it. It's their choice. For example, in this case, they would have to keep it because we kept it open for it to be a little bit more interactive, so they get a chance to see the speaker and so on and so forth, which is also not a problem providing hijab is maintained. Yes?
A lot more functions in place. Everybody has a camera, so they take pictures themselves, women without hijab, and they post it on Facebook. So
Yeah.
your sister, your wife.
Yeah, so in that case, so the brother raised a question that, well, you know, people have cameras and they're taking pictures. So if there is a recognizable, you know, threat, right? It is what it is. These cameras are a problem, you know. Then it would be better to, of course, to keep your hijab, for the sisters to keep their hijab on. If you know, if there is that feeling that someone's going to take a camera. If you're in a small gathering of 10, 15 people, you know everybody, it's different, you know. But obviously at the big functions and things, yeah, you never know these days. You have to be all very careful. It would be, in that case, if, you know, it would be better to keep the hijab. Unfortunately, that's the case. People don't use their common sense. Like I know at JCC, for example, the photography is not allowed. But people still do it, unfortunately. At weddings and things, it's not allowed on the ladies' side to take photographs of anyone but the bride and the groom. You know, but unfortunately, it's been done in the past, and people are just, they don't have that fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't know. At least in that moment they didn't, right? And then there's women whose pictures are going out without hijab, having their haya and their whole life violated, not by a non-Muslim, by a fellow community member. Again, based on jahl. This is a lack of understanding of what haya is, what hijab is, what is modesty for men and for women. Yes?
Can you give a brief definition of hijab for women and for men?
For women, the hijab, of course, is the physical hijab, right? So the covering up to the wrists, the neck, the hair, the ears, and the rest of the body, and of course wearing loose clothing that is not that doesn't demonstrate, you know, the contour of the body. For men, the hijab is primarily, of course, with their eyes, right? To simply learn to control themselves. And actually today, unfortunately, I think we see that the biggest problem is, well, with both men and women, but especially men. I mean, what this Morgan Freeman has now gone down the tube as well. I mean, I love that guy. He was an amazing actor, really wise guy, and now apparently he's apparently quite the scoundrel. You know, yeah, and he's done some pretty nasty things if what they're saying is true over the years in his production company. I mean, I always thought the old guy, I mean, he did that God documentary and all that. I mean, you know, so clearly man's hijab is to learn to control themselves, first and foremost. Of course, modest dress among men is important, but the Sharia doesn't outline exactly what that is aside from covering the private parts. But we're told from the viewpoint of akhlaq that the way we dress should be such that it doesn't attract unnecessary attention to us or cause fitna, right? So wearing like tank tops and things like that from an akhlaqi perspective. Tank top meaning cut off sleeves. Short sleeves is fine, but you know, like the undershirts and stuff like that, that's not appropriate, you know? From an akhlaqi perspective, that would definitely be disliked. So dress in such a way that you're presentable, that you're, you know, do not attract unnecessary attention to yourself. But the primary hijab of the men, of course, and most importantly, is learning to control their eyes. And now we know their hands too. As we can see, I mean, it's almost what every actor these days, every prominent, Charlie Rose, I mean, how many, all these people on what CNN and ABC and NBC and all of them are going down, you know, except Trump for some reason. He's more popular than ever. I don't understand why. And there's even have recordings against him, and the man's popularity is increasing in the United States. Akhiru Zaman, it's truly the end of times are coming. Anyhow, that's a little bit of comedic humor there, you know. But no, of course it is. I'm not making light of what these men have done. I'm just, you know, I'm being a little bit satirical, you know, facetious. Any other questions? Because the ladies didn't have any questions today. It's fine. We have 5 more minutes still, so. Any other questions? So far, good questions. I'm always here to ask questions. I mean, I'm not going anywhere. I've not just come from Ramadan. I'm here all the time now, right? So that's for the foreseeable future. Yes?
Say if you cut yourself, right, when you're fasting, how much amount of blood do you have to lose for it to be?
It doesn't break your fast.
It doesn't break your fast.
No, you're all good. Don't worry about it. But I mean, if you need IV and you're so sick you have to take medicine, but take it, eh? I mean, you know, if you cut yourself shaving or something, it's fine, you know. But if you need urgent medical attention, get the medical attention, okay? Immediately. You break your fast and immediately get emergency medical attention for that. But no, it's not among the mubtilat or the invalidators of salah, of siyam, rather. Any other questions? Yeah. It's fine. Getting a needle while fasting, like an injection or a vaccine or something, it's fine. It's allowed. Yeah. Any other questions? So one of the things that I've been thinking, and I spoke to Brother Muhammad about it, is in the future, since we have quite a good number of brothers and sisters here today, since knowledge is so important and aql is so important, I hope I've made the case for it. Okay. So now that I've made the case, argued my case, why don't we have some kind of educational program here? I am at your disposal. Why don't we? For Tawheed, answering the basic questions of Tawheed, of Nabuwa, why we have a Prophet, an Imam, Qiyamat, Adalat, so on and so forth, of belief, and maybe some basic issues of fiqh. Basic, nothing to, maybe go through the Q&A of Sayyid Sistani's book, A Guide for Muslims in the West. Nothing too intensive. But that would require people to actually come. I mean, we're not going to prepare for this and put time into it. Well, we still will because the reward is there. But I'm not sure the community would be so interested in supporting that venture. That venture would only be successful if you are interested in that venture. Then the community will say, okay, let's just shift back to Mujalas. It's up to you. Maybe we should take a survey sometime, Brother Muhammad. I'll leave it with you to gauge it for real. I mean, if people really would like to do that, we could do bi-weekly or something like that. I mean, I'm here at your service, بِخِدْمَتِكُمْ. So, now that I made the case, you know, now I put the bait out, but I have to reel you in still.
The only way to figure it out
Yeah.
is have one of those sessions.
Let's see how many turn out, yeah.
Right after Ramadan, we will plan one of
Let's
those.
plan, yeah.
And
Especially for a guy.
yeah.
For aqaid, yeah. Tawheed, starting with the existence of Allah and about atheism. We'll talk about Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, all these people, Stephen Hawking's, and their arguments against the existence of God. And we'll present all the evidence and the proofs countering their arguments against the existence of God. I think that would be very worthwhile, honestly.
I think you're right because
Yeah.
Anybody wants to do that.
Yeah. Let's take this offline.
just
Let's discuss it. Yeah.
the existence of